Welcome back to Daily AI News at Let's Data Science. It's 2026-0330. Today, we're diving into some pivotal developments from the future of machine intelligence to major product launches. Let's get to it. We begin with a landmark legal development that could reshape how large language models are trained. Anthropic has settled copyright claims after a U.S. district court found in November 2025 that the company downloaded published works from the pirated repositories Library Genesis and Pirate Library Mirror. The settlement establishes a roughly $1.5 billion fund to compensate authors and publishers, with payments estimated at about $3,000 per work. This is one of the most financially significant training data settlements we've seen in the generative AI era. To qualify, authors must demonstrate that Anthropic downloaded their book from the LibGen or Pirate Library Mirror datasets, and that the work has an ISBN or a U.S. Copyright Office registration within 5 years. The claims deadline is today, March 30th, 2026. The specificity of the ruling matters. It ties liability directly to the use of identifiable pirated repositories, Library Genesis and Pirate Library Mirror, rather than abstract arguments about fair use. For AI labs, this underscores that dataset provenance is no longer a background compliance issue. It is a material financial risk. A $1.5 billion settlement creates a precedent that boards, investors, and insurers will factor into model development strategies. For practitioners, the implication is clear. Governance around training data sourcing must be auditable, documented, and defensible. We are moving from a move fast and scrape phase into a world where chain of custody for data is as important as model architecture. Next, we turn to AI security. Researchers from the University of Oxford and the AI Security Institute have released Sandbox Escape Bench, an open-source benchmark designed to test whether AI agents with shell access can escape containerized environments. The benchmark evaluates 18 scenarios spanning orchestration, runtime, and kernel layers, using nested containers inside virtual machines. The objective in each case is simple but telling. Can the agent break out and retrieve a protected file called /flag.txt? The findings are sobering but nuanced. Frontier models were able to exploit common misconfigurations, including exposed Docker sockets, writable host mounts, and privileged container settings. However, they failed to execute kernel-level exploits. In other words, the models are opportunistic attackers. They succeed when operational hygiene is poor, but they are not yet discovering novel zero-day kernel vulnerabilities. Sandbox Escape Bench is significant because it provides a reproducible, open framework for red teaming AI agents in realistic DevOps environments. Security teams can now systematically test whether their configurations are resilient to AI-driven misuse. The actionable guidance is straightforward. Remove exposed Docker sockets, avoid privileged containers, and eliminate unnecessary host mounts. As agentic systems gain shell access in CI pipelines and production environments, these hardening steps move from best practice to baseline requirement. Our third top story highlights infrastructure economics. SoftBank Group announced it has secured a $40 billion unsecured bridge loan, maturing in March 2027. The lenders include JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Mizuho, SMBC, and UFG. SoftBank stated that the capital will bolster investments in OpenAI and support general corporate purposes. This follows prior commitments, including a $30 billion pledge to Vision Fund 2 and participation in the Stargate project. Under Masayoshi Son's leadership, SoftBank is doubling down on AI as a core strategic thesis. A $40 billion bridge facility of this scale signals urgency. Bridge loans are, by design, interim financing. That suggests near-term deployment plans, potentially accelerating infrastructure builds, model development partnerships, or large-scale equity positions tied to OpenAI's roadmap. For the broader ecosystem, this is about capital velocity. Access to $40 billion in unsecured financing shifts competitive dynamics. It influences compute procurement, data center expansion, and startup funding valuations. When capital aggregates at this scale around a single AI anchor like OpenAI, the ripple effects extend across the entire stack, from chipmakers to application layer startups. Now, let's talk about the physical constraint underlying all this ambition: memory. Multiple industry reports today describe a severe global RAM shortage, driven by surging AI data center demand. Prices have jumped between 80 and 90%. Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung collectively control about 95% of global DRAM supply, and manufacturers are prioritizing enterprise and AI infrastructure customers over consumer electronics. New fabrication plants are not expected to produce meaningful output until 2027 or 2028. That means sustained pressure on prices and availability. For research labs and startups, this is not an abstract macro story. It affects GPU server builds, cloud instance pricing, and experiment budgets. It also reinforces the importance of memory-efficient architectures, quantization strategies, and workload optimization. Algorithmic efficiency is becoming a financial hedge against supply chain constraints. Taken together, these top stories paint a coherent picture. On one end, we have tightening legal and compliance frameworks around training data, exemplified by the Anthropic settlement. On another, we see growing security scrutiny through benchmarks like Sandbox Escape Bench. At the same time, capital is concentrating through moves like SoftBank's $40 billion bridge loan to fuel OpenAI investments. And all of it runs headlong into hardware bottlenecks, with Micron, SK Hynix, and Samsung straining to meet AI-driven DRAM demand. Governance, security, capital, and compute. These are the four pillars defining this phase of AI's evolution. Now for a few other key updates in our lightning round. At ACC Bot 26 and in the New England Journal of Medicine, a large international randomized trial evaluated FF-Rangio, an AI-driven image-based software for coronary physiology assessment. In 1,930 patients, FF-Rangio produced one-year primary event rates of 6.9%, compared to 7.1% for invasive wire-based fractional flow reserve. The tool was faster and avoided additional catheters and hyperemic drugs. If cost analyses support adoption, FF-Rangio could meaningfully increase physiologic testing uptake in interventional cardiology. For data governance professionals, Forrester released the Forrester Wave Data Quality Solutions, Q1 2026. The report evaluated 10 vendors and concludes that platforms are shifting from rule-based cleaning toward AI-driven automation, multimodal insights, and end-to-end observability. Enterprises are advised to prioritize unified, governance-enabled platforms that balance generative and agentic AI with transparency. In short, AI-ready data quality now requires observability across structured and unstructured data pipelines. In infrastructure news, China Mobile opened its Global Intelligence Center in Fo-Tan, Hong Kong. The facility integrates high-performance computing, intelligent scheduling, multimodal data fusion, and more than 440 overseas points of presence. It is designed to support training and inference for models with hundreds of billions of parameters, positioning Hong Kong as a regional AI infrastructure hub. From the research community, a new ArgZev submission details the development of a European Union time-indexed reference dataset for assessing the performance of signal detection methods in pharmacovigilance using a large language model. The dataset extracts Section 4.8 from the summaries of product characteristics for 1,513 centrally authorized products, producing 17,760 MPC versions and 125,026 drug adverse event associations spanning 1995 to 2025. A restricted subset covers 1,479 active products and 110,823 associations, enabling rigorous benchmarking of signal detection methods. In policy, a UK Parliamentary Joint Committee reported that the government has not formally defined sovereign capabilities or specified which technologies it will prioritize. The ambiguity, the committee warns, complicates R&D and investment planning in areas including artificial intelligence, drones, and munitions. The recommendation: establish formal definitions, prioritize technology lists, and clearly defined levels of sovereignty. And finally, in Nature, researchers reconstructed whole genomes from ancient dog remains at Gough's Cave in England and Pınarbaşı in Turkey. The study suggests dogs diverged from wolves earlier than previously thought and were widespread in Western Eurasia between 18,500 and 14,000 years ago, with evidence of shared diets and co-burial practices. And that's your AI briefing for today. The landscape is moving faster than ever, and we'll be here to track it with you. For more insights, visit us at letsdatascience.com. Thanks for tuning in. Stay curious, and we'll be back tomorrow with the latest in AI.